Oh gosh. All right. Yeah. We are joined right now by it. Oh, that's not gonna work. Welcome back to Fox 17 Sports Overtime. We're joined right now by Titan insider Terry McCormick, who, of course, has been covering the two-tone blue for a long time now. And he and I are both old enough to remember. And I remember meeting and watching the likes of Steve McNair. Of course, it is July 4th weekend. And this is a weekend that a lot of Titans fans remember that we lost Steve McNair over a decade ago now. But I want to talk about Steve McNair, the player. And Terry, you saw Steve more than just about anybody else I can possibly think of. What is your memories of Steve McNair?
I just remember him as one of the toughest football players I've ever come across in my life. You know, usually when you think of tough guys, you think of linebackers or offensive linemen, things like that. But Steve played the quarterback position, you know, in a way that few others really ever have, just by his sheer toughness and his will.
No question. I mean, I can remember a lot of Steve plays. Of course, we all remember the Super Bowl play that he had there towards the end of that potential game-winning drive that never was. The run in Jacksonville to clinch the AFC Championship game, and some of the other just the touchdown run against Pittsburgh at home where he flipped over the pylon. And of course, we all heard about the injuries. And we can all remember the back injury, Terry, the hip injury, the calf injury. There was so many things. Do you remember thinking, boy, I don't know if Steve is going to make it this week after hearing some of the injury reports?
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing because, you know, don't forget the sternum injury that he had that kept him out. And that's kind
Cincinnati,
of what set
yes,
the stage up for one of his earliest heroics. He was good enough, I guess, to be the backup on a cold day in Pittsburgh. And Neil O'Donnell started the game. The Titans are needing a score at the end of the ball game to pull this game out. O'Donnell gets hit, gets a concussion, and knocked out of the game. Onto the field comes Steve McNair, completes a pass to Chris Sanders for a big first down, completes a pass to Aaron Kinney for a touchdown. And really, that was one of the first times that kind of the Steve McNair legend was born. And it was in the aftermath of a sternum injury where he nearly retired from football because he was tired of getting, you know, beat on and taking so many vicious hits.
Yeah, you're right. He cracked his sternum, if I'm not mistaken, in the season opener against Cincinnati that year there at Adelphia Coliseum at the time. And then was able to kind of, Neil O'Donnell took over from there. And then, you're right. Steve was able to come in and perform those heroics. Does it shock you, Terry, that there are people, Titans fans, people wearing jerseys who are unsure who Steve McNair is?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think most people who are Titans fans know who Steve McNair is, know what kind of player he was, know the things that he accomplished in his life, both on the football field and also giving back to the community in a lot of different ways with his football camp, the work he did in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. You know, he was a guy that certainly, you know, had his flaws, had his issues in certain aspects, but also did a lot of good for this community and really was kind of the face of the franchise along with Eddie George and Jeff Fisher during those early years when the franchise first got here.
You know, I when I think about Steve and the amazing player that he was, I can't, just move on from this without talking about that 2003 MVP season where, of course, he split the MVP. How many people can say that? I split the MVP with Peyton Manning. And I remember just kind of being in shock, actually, when we all knew Steve had a great year, but to think he was MVP worthy and the people who watched him thought he was MVP worthy was very special, very special.
Oh, no doubt about it. And I think what he did in 2003 was actually kind of, in some ways, you know how a lot of times when a player has a really good year and then gets overlooked, the next year they're voted to a Pro Bowl or they're voted to the Major League All-Star game or such as that, rewarded for what they did, not only the current season, but also what they've done in the past. I think you could really start to see Steve McNair's game elevate as a passing quarterback quarterback in 2002. And that 2002 team made it all the way to the AFC Championship game. And Steve really kind of flew under the radar in large part with the national media in 2002. And by the time 2003 rolled around, when he continued that sort of success, I think people were starting to see just how special a talent that this man was on the football field. And I think part of the reason he was MVP in 2003 was that he continued the good work that he'd done in 2002.
Yeah, and I've never heard anybody explain it like that before, but that makes a lot of sense what you just said about Steve there. Before we move on from that, I've gotta ask about watching Steve in the purple with the Ravens and how weird that had to be, and why Steve did not finish his career here with the Titans, and of course ended up moving on. Was that in your opinion? Did that strain the legacy of Steve at all, moving on to the Ravens, at least with the fan base here in Nashville?
No, I don't think it did. I think, obviously at the time, Titans fans probably didn't want to see Steve McNair, or for that matter, Derek Mason or Samari Rolle, wearing the colors of a team that they had a lot of disdain for, and a team that had been a thorn in their side and a genuine playoff rival. In fact, that rivalry still goes on now, it seems like, with the way the Titans and Ravens have gone back and forth in the playoffs just the last couple of years. But getting back to Steve, it was really an interesting night when he came back for that Monday night game. I believe it was a Monday night game. As a member of the Baltimore Ravens, along with Derek Mason. Remember, the Titans had a big lead in that ball game. I think Lamont Thompson had intercepted him twice in that game and made a couple of big plays against him. But at the end, classic Steve McNair, classic Derek Mason, he engineered a comeback, and they won it in the fourth quarter with a late touchdown pass from McNair to Mason. Just kind of ironic how it all worked out, that here they were, had done such great work for the Titans, and there they were doing it for the Ravens against Tennessee.
And of course, on the opposite sideline was somebody that Steve knew very well, in Vince Young, who took over at that point as the new franchise quarterback as the Titans. But what I find amazing is, Terry, to this moment, and Ryan Tannehill has played very well, but you can make the argument the Titans are still trying to replace Steve McNair in a certain way.
Yeah, especially from, that iconic quarterback standpoint. I think Ryan Tannehill's numbers the last couple of years since he's come to the Titans certainly speak for themselves. I think, that Tannehill is a franchise quarterback. I think he's a guy who can take this team where it wants to go. But, he was acquired from the Dolphins. Steve was a homegrown Titan, Oiler, as it were, because he was drafted by the Houston Oilers in 1995. And I think that there will always be a special place in the hearts for Titans fans for Steve McNair, no matter, if Ryan Tannehill leads them to a Super Bowl, or no matter years from now, if, somebody else leads them to Super Bowls.
Yeah, very, very special player, and Steve McNair. All right. Thanks, Terry. I appreciate that. And we'll be right back. Break. Now come back, do the kicker. All right. And welcome back to Fox 17 Sports Overtime. I'm Justin McFarland. I'm joined right now by Terry McCormick. He, of course, is with TitanInsider.com, where you can get all the latest information about the two-tone blue. And Terry, I got to ask you, what is this team doing at kicker? Last year was a bit of an adventure that ended, ironically, with the Titans watching their former kicker, Ryan Suckup, win a Super Bowl ring down in Tampa, while